Home is where connections are made, memories are formed, and ideas are born. And no one knows home better than NFM. Thanks for tuning in to I Am Home, the podcast that goes deeper than trends and dives into what it means to make your house a home.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to I Am Home, the Home Life Best Life podcast. I'm Tyler Wisecup. Unfortunately, we don't have Becca today, but I am joined by my other co-host. She's bolder than a Lisa Frank Trapper Keeper wearing Pinko jeans. It's Hilary Waltemath.
Hey, Tyler.
Hi, Hilary. Did you like that one?
I did.
Yeah, you
I
didn't even laugh. You thought that
No.
you're just accepting that one as like part of your heart.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Big Lisa Frank fan.
Yeah. Who doesn't?
Right.
I mean, the boldest designs, and that's what I think of when I think of Hilary Waltemath in general.
Flattered.
So, yeah.
Flattered.
So today, our topic, hence this, I only had one intro, so it doesn't make as much sense in my punnery, but we'll go with it, is we're taking a time-traveling journey through home design trends from the 50s, the fabulous 50s, the groovy 70s, and the as-if 90s. So Hilary, you're going to help us kind of discover how these eras influence modern design and why these there's timeless elements in these styles that are still captivating the hearts and in our homes today. So I'm excited to talk to you about this topic because I think there's a lot to pull from these styles. But first, let me tell you why we're even doing this podcast. And that's because NFM is more than just your everything home store. We're in the business of improving lifestyles because your home life should be your best life. And you can learn more at nfm.com. All right, Hilary, what era do you want to talk through first?
So I want to start with the 50s. And when we were kind of thinking about our trend topic for this month, we were kind of talking about transformations. And it got me thinking about how, we've talked a lot about how trends are cyclical and wanted to research a little bit more about like the origins of some of these design trends and how they come back around. And what's interesting is, or what I found interesting as I was like kind of looking back and thinking about how they've made a comeback, they're not always so obvious. Maybe more obvious if you lived in that era or you owned a home in that era. But as we like latch on to new trends, sometimes the younger generations don't always understand like where those came from. They don't just suddenly appear out of nowhere. And like we've talked a lot, we're in a world where it feels like styles are shifting constantly, and it can feel overwhelming to know which trends are worth embracing. So I'm going to kind of take you through the 50s, 70s, and 90s. And I intentionally skipped a couple of the decades in between just to show some of the more dramatic transformations that happened and some interesting and surprising returns they've made. Starting with the fabulous 50s, it was a decade that brought us mid-century modern, pastel kitchens, and the start of America's suburban design obsession. So the 50s were optimistic, atomic, and functional. And the post-World War II optimism and a booming economy defined the 50s, especially with interior design. It was a merge of practicality with futuristic flair. The era celebrated newness, new materials, new appliances, new ways of living. Suburban homes were filled with cheerful colors, atomic motifs, space-age influences, Formica countertops, chrome-legged furniture, and pastel kitchens were all the rage. Mid-century modern style took off, like we said. Clean lines with tapered legs and organic forms became staples. It was an era of streamlined utility, but with personality, pattern, and pizzazz. So I pulled together some visuals for the 50s. And in these photos, you can see some of the pastels, like mint green, soft pink, or was also known as First Lady Pink. So
First Lady Pink. Yes.
So it was President Eisenhower's wife. I think her name was Mamie. She like found an opportunity to like add some pizzazz to the space and really leaned into this kind of like pastel pink color. So pastels became huge, and that like design choice became pretty iconic, and then was kind of known as First Lady Pink.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. That's a great color too.
Yeah. So butter yellow was very popular, which is interesting, is like one that's very current right now, particularly in the fashion world. We're seeing a ton of butter yellow emerge.
Yeah, I think we just talked on our KitchenAid mixer. That's like their color this year is KitchenAid butter yellow.
Yeah. So I'm living for the butter yellow, but I also didn't realize that this was like a staple color necessarily from the 50s. Yeah. And not to brag, I was not alive in the 50s, but it's interesting that feels like new and fresh now, but it is not a new and fresh color necessarily.
We think that we're discovering yellow right now, but it's been around since the 50s.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yep. So patterns, pretty iconic patterns in the 50s. So think of starbursts, the boomerang pattern, the sputnik kind of shape. I'm trying to remember where I put some of these photos in. I think there was like the wallpaper in one of them has some of those like atomic patterns in them. You can certainly see like more clean lines with tapered legs, like pretty like clean design. There's like interesting choices, but it is very like simple in a lot of ways, the way the furnishings are designed. Walnut wood was very popular, and is pretty iconic when we think about mid-century modern design choices. Built-in furniture became a big thing. TV rooms started to become a space to design for. Like TV rooms were not a thing.
Yeah.
Much before the 50s. And lounge chairs, kind of the rise of leisure is what brought a lot of this on. And now every home has a TV room.
Yeah. It's a feature for most people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
I wonder
then,
if like too, just based on like what you're talking about from a timeline perspective of just like, we're building all these homes, we're doing it super fast. Like if you look at like the 1800s design, like all this like super elaborate, like everything's like super detailed, it just takes forever to make. But if we're like just slapping these things up, which at that time a lot of these things were happening as the suburban sprawl was happening. I wonder if that's just practicality wise.
Oh, I'm sure.
Just leaning into that.
Yeah, and you kind of like the next era kind of like tries to overcorrect a little bit. And so I imagine at this time, and like
we're trying to do something different. You guys are
yes,
Gotcha.
You've done this old-fashioned, ornate carving. We want sleek, clean, modern. They were designing homes around refrigerators. Like that was not always a thing.
I mean, they're going to space for crying out loud. They don't got time for this.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So like TVs and hi-fi systems, like were becoming more popular. Linoleum floors and really interesting kind of patterns. Checkered floors were big, kind of like speckled finishes. Decorative wall clocks. I think we can all think about like an iconic mid-century modern wall clock. That was a new thing that came about in the 50s.
Those like this image right here, I think on the right hand, lower to left side, the gold one with like the flare sunbeam things happening. I love those.
Yes.
Those are great.
Yeah. Yeah. And wood paneling on the walls. Some fun. I think these photos are, some of them, I don't know how authentic some of them are. Like finding authentic 50s photos was a little bit of a challenge. But obviously like the type of photography that was done, like wasn't always like the truest capture either with that technology, but just really rich in color as well too, with some really interesting shapes. And like the bottom left photo is like an outdoor space with cool. outdoor furniture too, which became more of a priority in the 50s. So if we flip to the next slide, here are some examples of like how it's made a return. So I should remember when this came about, but millennial pink was popular several years ago. So again, that kind of pastel pink made a return. The top left photo is a bathroom, and that's the original toilet and like sink basin.
Yeah.
But in a redesigned, kind of remodeled space, they kind of neutralized it a little bit, and then added like some of those iconic 50s patterns in the shower curtains.
Oh, that's the curtain. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Yes, that's the shower curtain in front of the tub in that particular room.
Gotcha. In the neutralization that you're talking about, because the pink is like grabs you, and I've seen those bathrooms before, but like they have a little bit more. It's just like a grayish.
Yeah. It's a gray toned. I think they did some tile with some pink tile accents, and then a paint color to kind of match. If I remember.
Yeah, because we're looking at the shrink down version of these, because we're trying to show you a lot of different examples of it. But it looks fantastic. It still like features, like it makes the star, like you're saying, that fun pink, and then you're still adding some of those extra accents with the green there. And I don't know that you would automatically think 50s other than just looking at the the toilets themselves. But interesting. I love that.
So this is my campaign. If you buy an older home, you don't have to gut all the personality. Like lean into some of those like design choices, and you can modernize them and make them feel kind of fresh. The second photo is a kitchen, and in it is like a little breakfast nook, and it's got the iconic tulip table. Are you familiar with the tulip table?
No, what's that?
You would if you recognized it.
Okay.
So it's got like a circular base, and then it kind of like tapers up into like a thin.
Okay, that's what that's called.
Yes, and then it kind of like tapers back out to the tabletop. So like iconic 50s design, that kind of like round base that tapers up. It's also in like the chairs too. So tulip tables certainly had made it come back in the last several years. And some of these like returns have, I would say, fizzled a little bit. They're still around and still relevant, but we certainly reached that point where I feel like we see it everywhere. So still around, still relevant, but like a popular design choice of the 50s.
Gotcha. Now I know the name of them.
Tulip table. Yeah.
Cool.
And then the photo on the top right, want you to focus on that desk chair. So this is where like that material mixing started to happen. So it was like steel tubing for the base and the legs, and then it's got like a curved wood back. I cannot remember. There's like an iconic designer that came up with this design. So this is kind of like a riff on it. So this is a chair that you could probably purchase today, but is riffed on a design from the 50s.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then looks great. And it's like, it obviously from just a flat back to transition to like all these curves, and it's very clean line, that kind of thing happening with it. So
also being comfortable too.
Space agey, right? All those kind of things wrapped up in one simple chair.
Yeah, exactly. And then the photo just below that, it's got a couple things going on. So this photo, they kind of pulled a few kind of iconic mid-century modern design choices and added that in, but they haven't like overwhelmed they didn't try to recreate a 50s living room with this. So in the back is in front of the windows, the iconic Eames chair. So it's lower profile, usually paired with that footrest. So like iconic design. Herman Miller, I believe, was the designer, still around today, still influences a lot of design choices today. And then the light fixture is kind of like what we call like a Sputnik inspired design. So it's space AG, where it's got multiple arms that kind of branch out like the satellite. So a photo you wouldn't look at and go, oh yes, inspired by the 50s necessarily, but reimagined, modernized designs from the 50s.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Those spindly arms. Yeah, I can totally see like it should be floating up in space right now. And that chair, that iconic chair is just, it's all over the place still, but it's something that like looks as comfortable today as it did in the Mad Men show. Right?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. And it brings a little interest to a space
Right.
too.
Yeah.
You could go with a classic like silhouette, but why not, mix things up a little bit and do something with a lot of history too behind the design.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. You ready to move into the 70s?
Oh, I'm dying to.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So we're going to fast forward to the 70s. I kind of summarize this into earthy, eclectic, and free-spirited. The 70s where nature, texture, and personality ruled every room. Shag rugs, houseplants, and rattan for days. So the 70s interior design was deeply influenced by the Back to Nature movement, global craft traditions, and the counterculture lifestyle, like we kind of talked about a little bit. Homes were filled with earthy colors, plants flourished indoors, and furniture often had curved silhouettes and boho vibes. Wood-paneled walls, beaded curtains, and funky patterns reflected a free-spirited rebellion against mid-century modern minimalism. It was cozy, groovy mix of hippie aesthetic meets handmade warmth. So we've got some visuals that I think are... I'm trying to... It was a little easier to find photos from the 70s than it was the 50s, but it's just like full of earth tones, rust, that iconic avocado green, mustard, chocolate brown. So we went from pastels to like deep, rich, earthy hues. Patterns you'd often see were psychedelic swirls, geometric prints, really oversized motifs, as you can see in some of those patterns. As far as furnishings go, macrame, hanging planters, shag carpets, more wood paneling. Furniture got a little bit more curved. And then owls were kind of like an iconic icon, so to speak.
Yeah, were they trying to like save the owls in the 70s? That was like a big thing.
Yes.
They're just out there in nature a lot, and all these colors, like the avocado greens, the browns, like some of those feel like very inspired by just like the mental space that everyone's in, just out there just trying to save the world a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't know if anybody else can share in this like memory of like it was like a macrame wall hanging in the shape of an owl, and I think it had like wood beads for eyes. Yes.
Those were in-law houses.
Yes. Like that's a very distinct memory. So Tyler, I'm curious of like what I've shared about 70s. Is there anything in there that jumps out as like, oh, that's made a comeback? I've seen that in the 2000s at least.
I mean, we have talked a little bit, I feel like, about the rattan and some of those like the macrame type stuff. I feel like there's just like in accents, there's a lot of that kind of stuff. And even in some of like our patio designs and things like that we've covered in the podcast. I think we've seen a little bit of like avocado colors in certain pieces. I think there was a fridge that we had recently in the store that had a little bit more of that green tone, some of those colors that I've seen. Those are ones that jump out to me. Is there something that I'm totally missing, blanking on this?
No, I think you captured a lot of it. I think the other thing we've talked about like pretty recently is like earth tones as well, like the rusts and the browns, your favorite just Pantone color of the year.
The mocha mousse,
chocolate brown has been remixed. Yes. So if we flip to the next slide, here's some more visuals of how it's made its return over the years. So like you said, macrame, velvet was another kind of like popular material in the 70s that we see. I think like the green velvet, like tufted sofa really had its moment earlier in the 2000s, and it's still like sticking around. Like it's fizzled a ton, but I think people see green as more of a neutral that they can work with. Cantilever chairs was a design from the 70s that certainly made a comeback. So the bottom right photo, it's a little tough to see, but it's an actual rattan chair.
Yeah, I see it.
So it's got like a base and then like front legs that connect to the seat and back, but there's no like back legs that are connected to the back of the chair. So it looks like something you could kind of like bounce in, like baby bouncer almost, but
Yeah.
for adults.
Yeah.
So that like cantilever design.
Which totally feels like the 70s.
Yeah.
They're bouncing out there in nature.
Right.
Keep bopping around.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
But it's just a fun design too. It's like one of those that
Mhm.
when you sit in it, you're like, this shouldn't work.
Yeah.
Right? How does this exist in a home
Mhm.
and not fall apart immediately?
Yeah, exactly. Bottom left is another one that feels very inspired by the 70s. Like furniture was very low slung, so it was very low to the ground. So this photo, the cocktail table or coffee table is very low to the ground, as well as the sofa.
Is this the era of sunken living rooms, that kind of thing?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. What else in here?
They're sitting cross-legged a lot.
Right.
So all right.
Be one with the earth. You got to be closer to the ground. Exactly.
Okay, cool.
You get it. Botanical prints, like what's in the top right. Again, you think of the designer Justina Blakeney, who's like very well known for that in particular.
And I don't think you would look at that like you were saying before and just immediately think the 70s.
Oh yeah,
just the concepts.
Justina refers to the 70s for inspiration, and she very well could, but you don't necessarily think that when you're first come across it. It feels new and current, but it's been around long before.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just inspired by that mindset. We're just bringing pieces out and reinterpreting them.
Yes.
In ways that work in today's homes. So
exactly. Shag rugs. We talked about shag carpet. Like we're seeing longer, shaggier, higher pile rugs. And disco balls. I don't know if you've seen like a disco ball being thrown into a room here and there, but another iconic thing from the 70s that's made a return.
Yeah. Who doesn't?
Right. Okay. Should we move ahead to the 90s?
Let's do it.
And I think this is where and this is on aging, where I can now see I'm seeing things
that you lived through actually.
Yes.
And now you're like, oh my, I can't believe
that's making a comeback.
Personal knowledge of how where you were and how they're being interpreted today. This is one where I think about too, this next generation, I feel like they are just taking a lot from my childhood, and I don't know how I feel about it.
Some type of way, right?
Hopefully we can go through and get to a better place through talking about some of this.
Yeah. So, 90s is, I would say the era that we're closest to kind of circling back to right now, which is a wild thing. And anything older than 20 years is considered vintage.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding me. Yes.
Yeah. So something you had in 2005 is vintage. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
You're not helping so far, but
sorry.
Keep it rolling.
Helpful context. Okay. So 90s. This was about a more relaxed, practical, and kind of transitional lifestyle. So this is where transitional style really started to come about. Okay. So it was all about cozy neutrals, oversized furniture, and a love for the practical way of living and kind of having your homes reflect that. So this was an overcorrection from the 80s that was very extravagant. This was all about leaning into comfort and calm and the return to simplicity. Very neutral tones, beige, sage, taupe. And this is where spaces started to mix traditional and contemporary styles. So they're the rise of transitional design. Influences include the rise of tech in the home, the popularity of shabby chic, and a general desire for livable spaces, wallpaper borders, oak cabinetry, faux finishes. Home offices started to become more common. The 90s home was functional, familiar, and often DIY friendly, embracing a kind of casual coziness. It was an era of bold creativity with fashion, art, and music. And started to see some of that in interiors. So colors like we talked about, some pastels like made it around. Again, you can see a little bit of that butter yellow in that living room in the bottom middle photo, paired with some more primary colors. So you can just see like in this photo compared to like the other eras we looked at, like there's a little bit, to me, there feels like there's more variety. Like the 50s and the 70s, like a lot of homes looked similar.
Mm-hmm.
This, I feel like you started to see like a little bit more variety and a little bit more personality come through.
Because all of these, I'm looking at them right now. I would say the same thing. I'm like, I'm almost struggling to see the style there, but that's intentional.
Yes, exactly. But there's a few things like patterns that you'll start to pick up on here. Stripes were very popular. I think there's like 1, 2, 3 different chairs in here with stripes in it. But you could see the rest of the room feels a little different. Gingham was also very popular, and these ultra frilly florals. I think that is one of the things that kind of like hung on from the 80s as well too. We had both wicker and we had chrome. Matching furniture sets really took off here. Canopy beds, felt like peak 90s design was getting a canopy bed. We got some kind of interesting lighting designs, pattern mixing. I think that was another kind of like iconic design choice of the 90s. And you can see in these photos, we're mixing all sorts of patterns. Decorative painting. So you can see in the top left photo, we've got sort of a faux finish, like sponge painting. Almost. Yeah. So
instead of just flat painting, like there was a lot more weird kind of DIY painting.
Yes.
Okay.
Sponge, rag rolled, even painting with plastic wrap to get these like faux finishes. Faux finished look.
I definitely had friends that had that.
Oh yes. Same. That 2 shades of purple faux finish in my bedroom was an iconic choice. Wallpaper and murals were very popular. Greenery and florals. None of it was real. None of it was real and living. It was all faux. And dusty.
And it didn't look good.
No, it did not. It never got cleaned. Window treatments were really over the top. Saw a lot of oak furnishings as well.
Golden oak.
Yes. Okay, now Tyler, I want to quiz you again after getting kind of like a rundown of 90s design choices. Can you now think about some of these that have made a return or starting to make a return based on our combos?
Yeah, I know like we've talked about some of the stripes that definitely like that's we've seen some of those still kind of stick around. And I feel like, gosh, it's so hard to put like a thumb on it in home design. I feel like I see it more in just like fashion, like what you're wearing on your body a lot. But I'm curious to see it like the after images and be able to like retroactively feel smart, because right now I'm not.
You're like, what?
I'm not feeling as smart.
And that may be part of like living through some of this as well too, like, and being so easy to spot. So Scott, flip us to our next slide. We'll see if this maybe brings a little bit more of it back. So like you mentioned, 90s aesthetics has been very popular in fashion and apparel and beauty even. And we know that interiors are kind of follow fashion. It always feels like it's a year later. So I think a year from now, I'll be interested to see where we're at. But floral prints, I don't know if you've seen more floral wallpaper designs, maybe a little bit more subdued, but again, taking something that was very popular in the 90s and kind of modernizing it a little bit.
Like the wall border floral print was always like the big thing for sure. And like having that blown up and like all over the wall. Because I haven't seen the wall border. I'm so curious if that's going to make a turn. I think about that one in particular a lot. I have a vivid memory of, it was my grandma's primary
bedroom.
Yeah.
And the wallpaper border pattern matched the curtains, which matched the bedding, which coordinated with the carpet color choice. Like it was, I don't know where she bought that or how she found all of that in that exact color and print, but they took matching very, very seriously.
The 90s was obsessed with matching. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Vintage Americana is another kind of like classic 90s design choice. And if you remember, last month we talked about outdoor trends. We had that kind of Americana themed one that I talked about for the that would be great for holidays. Wicker furniture that was very popular in the 90s. We're starting to see a little bit more of that. Cabinets going back to wood tones, particularly oak. So in like the top right photo, the upper cabinets are in oak wood and the lower cabinets are white.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't realize those were cabinets on the bottom, just looking at that image now. But yeah, that looks sharp, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've seen a lot of that myself. So that's kind of cool.
Another one is white appliances. So white appliances were in every kitchen in the 90s.
For sure.
And then the bottom center photo is a new kitchen that's got, I think this is maybe like, I think of the GE Profile line a lot. They've done a beautiful white appliance line that's been modernized with more interesting metal colors in the hardware design. Monochromatic color palette. So like bottom right is black and white checkered floor. We've got like a soft kind of grayish color on the wall. So it's just like black, white, neutral, those monochromatic color palettes. Neon, like our very own neon podcast.
Yes. I am home.
Yes.
Right behind you.
Yes. Neon was very popular in the 90s. We see it everywhere now.
Yep.
You kind of forget that like came up through the 90s, but it's very much made its return. I think our wall treatments episode at the beginning of the year, we talked about like lime wash or that faux plaster look.
The different kind of paint treatments that we're doing today. We're bringing some of that back.
Yes. Yeah. Similar look as some of that sponge painting, rag rolling that we saw in the 90s, but modernized to be appropriate for today. So,
yeah. So all these things, like you were saying, we're just finding, we think that they're brand new, but they're all just brought from other times. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're not super creative. Is that the...
No, I think there's creativity in how to, like, the fun part now, I think, is being inspired by the 90s and finding like subtle ways to kind of bring that back. That sense of like nostalgia is fun. So I think there's creativity in like, obviously you want your home maybe to look like some of these photos and the photos we showed in the previous slide. Or that like Nancy Meyers aesthetic that I've talked about and what feels like great length on here. But again, like that's a current kind of take on something that was popular in the 90s too. So I do think there's creativity in it, and it's hard. There's not too much that is truly original. So I think there's creativity in finding a way to bring it back.
Absolutely. I think that's well said. We're finding the creativity in the things that have existed before and how we interpret them today, and taking what's that new take and that new flavor. So interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So to me, it was really interesting how each of these decades were very distinct in their vibe. And they've managed to find their ways back into homes in the 2000s and beyond. With a modern twist, of course. And I think that just proves that great style never really goes out of fashion. You can find ways to kind of, if there's something about like the 90s or the 70s or the 50s that you loved and you want to have a piece of that, like you certainly should.
Perfectly said. Perfectly said. All right. Well, thanks, Hilary.
Yeah.
I appreciate this. I want to thank you, Bee's Knees episode today. And I want to thank our producers, Ann and Scott, and all our listeners. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and rating us wherever you listen to podcasts. Head over to nfm.com/podcast, where you can send us your questions and find more of our podcast content. I think that's going to do it for us today. But remember, as we always remind you, that home is what you make it.
Thanks for joining us today for I Am Home with Tyler Weisskopf, Hilary Waltemath, and Becca Sudbeck. No one knows home quite like NFM. So if you'd like more information on home design at NFM, please check out nfm.com and leave us a review on the podcast platform of your choice.